Hey everybody, welcome back to Make Others Successful, a podcast where we share insights, stories, and strategies to help you build a better workplace. My name's Mitch, if we haven't met yet, and I'm joined with Matt and Mike here. I just looked at the wrong one when I said that I know their names. This is Mike.
I wasn't going to say anything.
And this is Matt.
But I could totally try to be Matt for at least one episode.
Yeah.
I don't mind being called Mike.
Good luck. What are we talking about today? We are talking about a recent sort of learning, pondering that we have been thinking about in the context of one of our projects with a client. And it's around the concept of when systems fall short at your organization, people push themselves into a world of, some might call it shadow IT, some might call it their own little silo, where they decide to work their way in order to make it work for them. And then that kind of feeds into itself and promotes this further siloed environment that perpetuates and is really hard to break out of. And so we're going to talk about that world. If you felt like either you need to do things your own way so it finally works with you, or you have seen that happening at your organization, we're going to be talking all about that today. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. So why is this deeper than, like, we're thinking about using the term silos in the context of this episode title, but then we said silos, from some lenses it makes sense to call it silos, but it's really something maybe a little bit deeper than that. Do we want to talk to that at all?
Yeah, the way I would say it is silos is actually a symptom, not a problem, right?
A symptom of the problem.
Yeah. Like there's multiple reasons you could have silos. And the concept of being siloed is it can be cultural, it can be based on something that happened that created the silo. Like, it can be for lots of different reasons. Just because you're siloed, that doesn't, I think it's more of a symptom of the problem.
It can be just simple as responsibility assignment. Different departments in the organization.
Yeah.
Right. Natural, like they have things
naturally
they care
have
about.
separations.
It's natural. Yep.
Got it. So silos are a downstream effect of this problem, this
Reality
of working, people wanting to work in their own way because maybe the system or the business falls short, or the culture is naturally inclined to let people work that way.
Yeah.
What's the?
Does everybody understand what we mean? Like maybe I'm not sure everybody really understands.
Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, I mean, so what we're really talking about is people call it silos, people call it lack of communication. Different people working different ways. There's lots of ways people talk about it, but it really is the concept that you end up with many kind of mini organizations within an organization. Some people would call a related term probably is kingdom building, or I think there's a number of ways you can talk about it, but it's a core problem of like not all rowing together towards the same objective, feeling like I can't impact the bigger organization because I'm in my own little world, or not knowing what somebody else is doing that impacts my world, right? There's lots of additional, like, more detailed symptoms, but that all rolls up into this feeling of we're in silos, we're disconnected, which ultimately is caused by a different problem, which is a lack of cohesive leadership and strategy, which is largely what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I feel like this is sort of a spiritual successor of sorts to Excel is a Trap, which Mike talked about way back when maybe it's not intentional, but when you use a tool like Excel to build your process, we talk a lot in that other episode, but it perseverates this is my document, this is my spreadsheet, this is my domain. Everybody either stay out or make sure you do it this way, and it creates this world where this person has their kingdom, or these couple people have their kingdom. So check that one out if you find yourself in a world of deep Excel business processes. Can we talk about the why this happens in the first place? I feel like there's tons of different scenarios that could cause this. Should we go through some of those?
I think the big one for me, where I always start, is it's usually out of good intent and giving people power to solve problems within their little realm inside of their kingdom, and then never bringing it all back together. So people are given a budget. There's a problem they need to solve. They're empowered to solve that problem. Everybody feels great about it. They do great work. They actually come up with a creative solution, solve the problem, and they've invested a bunch of time and money maybe, and then nobody ever comes back up for air and says, okay, how does this work with the bigger picture? How do we incorporate this with the rest of the organization? And they go off and do that for a few quarters, right? And then by the time you get 3 quarters down the road, now you're in a situation where you've maybe created some additional layers of problems on top, and you've invested and you can't unwind it very easily. And so that's one of the places that I think it starts most often, because it's usually well-intentioned.
Yeah, I completely agree. An example of when that often happens, that scenario that you're talking about, is when large changes happen with an organization. Maybe we're opening up a new office in a different location. Maybe we're merging with another organization, and now we've got these 2 different ways of working that need to come together. Or perhaps we're starting up a new line of business, and those things oftentimes need leaders and people who are empowered to make decisions and make stuff happen for the business, which is all really good. And nobody, that's not the problem. The problem isn't that you're enabling people to do that. The problem is exactly what you were talking about, of that at some point in time that has to come back into the fold. You have to come back around and go, okay, cool, that's awesome. How does that work with the rest of our systems? How does that work with everything we're doing, right? Because when they were implementing that, maybe they created a spreadsheet to solve a problem, and that worked because we're just trying to get this done, and doing it any other way would have taken a long time. But you need to have the ability to say, that's awesome, but now we need to take that to the next step.
Yeah, maybe their culture or the way that they work treats those sessions, those opportunities, as instances to make something better, rather than it being a constant, ongoing, no matter what effort that is constantly folding things back in. The other one that comes to mind is when the culture is naturally inclined to do this. Maybe you don't know how it started, but that's just how people are working. And some people are naturally inclined to just work that way. And so it becomes this problem that you're not exactly sure how it started, but it just keeps going and going and going because people are inclined that way. And so, like I said, sometimes the root cause is hard to determine, but a culture that thinks this way can continue to feed into the life cycle of it becoming more and more of that problem, because everyone gets defensive over their stuff.
Well, you from an outside perspective, it looks like Band-Aids on Band-Aids on Band-Aids.
Yep.
From an internal perspective, it looks like I would be bleeding to death if I didn't have the Band-Aids, so I need the Band-Aids.
Right.
And so people protect that and try to make sure those stick and are doing their job.
Yeah. I feel like this also could relate to some of our conversations around IT and IT posture, where if IT sets things up way locked down in order to protect something, or in some cases call it like it's an easy button, it's easier to just lock it down than think critically about it, they treat it that way, which then promotes people to either need to work around it or build their own little mini business within the confines of what they're given access to, rather than treat it as something that can elevate above themselves and affect other people, which requires some IT cooperation.
Yeah, so IT and a bad relationship between IT and the rest of the organization can be exacerbate this problem. You have somebody who's gone out and done good work and made something work for them, and then now you need to bring it back in, and rather than the IT team going, this is really awesome. You did a great job doing this thing. Now we just need to figure out how to make it work. Let's partner on this and figure out how to. They go, that's shadow IT. Why did you do it that way? That's a terrible way to do it. It's, doesn't comply with our security requirements. It doesn't comply. The relationship can be a difficult thing in that world, or they can just have a general posture of, we don't allow those things. We're just not going to allow it. And not recognizing the intent and the value and the benefit that comes from that. So that's one like systemic structural problem. The other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about that is it also can come from a lack of leadership. Focus isn't the right term, but like buy-in, if you will. So I see this when
stewardship.
Yeah, sure.
We had that term thrown around, and
stewardship
lately.
probably isn't a bad isn't a bad. I don't know that's the perfect term, but it's definitely another term that's valid here. Like, if a leader is just looking at it going, the bottom line's doing good, we've got our customers are happy, perfect. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to provide anymore. I don't need to do anymore because that's all I need to worry about. You've got a problem because you should, as a leader in an organization, be thinking about all of this stuff, all of the way these things connect and the way these things work, and helping and empowering your employees to go beyond just the quick fix, beyond the get the work done, make the work happen. They need to be looking for the opportunities of saying, yep, we've done this for 6 months, for a year this way. Now's the opportunity. Let's go back and fix those things.
Yeah, I think
and I'm going to invest in it.
As the leader, one of your biggest responsibilities is to be 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And so when you're empowering people to solve those problems within their realm, you need to be beginning with the end in mind. We've talked about that before. And have the plan, like set the course in the beginning, go solve this problem. But remember, we've got to do this when you're done.
Yep.
And then come back and follow up on that action item.
Because they won't. They can't.
Right. They're busy doing
the system that you built, the way that you're approaching it, predisposes them to not do that. They have a solution. They got their work done. It works good enough.
Right.
It's painful for them to ask for money. It's painful for them to ask for time. It's painful for them to ask for all these different support mechanisms. You need to be that outlet to say, not only do I authorize, I expect you to come back to me and help and ask for help to solve this problem.
Yep.
Cool. Let's talk about, why does this matter? Like, what on its face?
Why does it create problems? The bottom line's good.
Yeah, right. On its face, it could not feel super impactful, but what does it result in that is either maybe opportunity cost or like hidden costs or downstream effects that might show up later?
It's really all about the difference between day-to-day operations and whether or not that's going well versus preparing for a future where you're growing and you're expanding, right? If you're just trying to keep doing what you've been doing and you're not trying to do much more, it's not. Should you fix it? Yes, in principle, yes. Is it going to have a huge impact? Maybe, depending on what it is, right? Like, because some people could think about what we're saying and going, well, yeah, I mean, if the thing we're going to solve is going to take half as much time, for sure we should fix it. But that's not what we mean. We mean it's not just about the amount of time. It's not just about cost savings. It's about positioning yourself for the future. And the reason it's such a problem is as you continue to bolt on these little groups, and you have all these groups, and you continue to grow, right? You get into situations where you're so dependent on each of these smaller pieces working well that you're now vulnerable. When any one of these starts to have a problem, the systems and processes that you have are brittle. They're heavily reliant on people and the people knowing how this stuff works. It's heavily reliant on technology that maybe your IT department doesn't know how to support. It's heavily dependent on business process that's not ideal, that doesn't have all of the checks and balances that it should have. And so then The moment something gets off kilter, the moment you try to expand it, put pressure on it, it starts to break. That's the huge danger, right? There's obviously, you look at, Mike, the Excel example, a perfect example, right? Anyone's going to understand when you go, well, this thing is running $100,000, $200,000 worth of business, and it is taking one full-time person to manage it. I could replace that maybe by spending $50,000 on a solution, and now nobody has to manage it, right? It just continues to work, no problem, right? That's a cost savings. Like that, you could make a case for that. These things are a little bit bigger. They're more systemic. They're not that easy, and those are where you're going to get the real value. That's where you're going to be able to go from, a $5 million business to a $20 million business because you're thinking about it right, because you've handled those things, because you've well incorporated all of these other pieces to your business.
Yeah.
I was going to say the two things that come to my mind. I think scale is a big one, obviously, if that's where you're trying to go. But I think generally people don't like to do dumb stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And when they find themselves doing the dumb stuff to deal with friction in between the silos, they don't like to be in that situation. And so employee retention is a real issue. Like, how many years do I have to do this before I go find someplace that does a better job of the same thing? I think that's a big one. And then the other thing, it's kind of related to scale, but it's about freeing up time so that your people can focus on your customers, right? And that human connection and building relationships, because that's the most valuable thing in the universe. It's more valuable than all of the, ones and zeros and numbers in the spreadsheets. And so I think those are the areas that we can stand to gain a lot from when it comes to our people and our customers.
More than just the dollars and cents.
More than just the dollars and cents.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Cool. Yeah. I feel like a couple other notes we have here is just some maybe symptoms that, again, at face value might not affect the bottom line, but they're inherently affecting the bottom line because of what they are, where different teams are working on the same things. They're just in different silos, solving the same problem in different ways. Or if they can't work in an efficient way that allows leadership to be, to visibly see how things are going and make judgment calls across how things are working, then they're making decisions off of bad information and just scattershot everything instead of something that feels streamlined and easy to turn this dial up here and pull this lever here. It just feels Band-Aid, 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 Band-Aid.
Yeah, your comment about the leadership being able to dial things is we didn't talk about it, but that is also a knock-on effect of solving this problem. Like, without it, you're each silo or each group is doing their own thing, and it's very hard to be like, I'm gonna mess with things from a higher level, which can seem like micromanage or like may sound like micromanagement, but it actually is enabling leadership to support the team rather than in the other model, you're dependent on the team doing everything. And knowing and understanding the bigger picture because you have very little input into what's going on. I thought that was really, that's we didn't call out before, but I think that's a really powerful one.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. Let's bring it down to as close to real world examples as we can. I feel like there's a few situations. We're not going to talk specifically about clients, but we can talk about the situations. Do we want to talk about kind of how this has reared its head in a few different contexts?
Sure.
Cool. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll start it off. Yeah. So just recent client that we've been working with, they struggle in the messy middle, I would say. So they do their work, they do very well. They know how to deliver and execute, and they have a lot of people that operate in that middle space who are holding it all together. And they're entering data multiple times in multiple systems. They don't know which system to look at to have the right copy of that same data. Makes decision-making difficult. And in their particular case, they're a large organization, so they have different practices or departments that have different responsibilities in the organization, but then they've also been over time compiled through acquisition. And so every time a new company is acquired, they do something really great, which is why they're being acquired. And so then they get trusted with their realm, and they do things a certain way, and they need to be integrated in the business. And we've been through some mergers and acquisitions, and that's a difficult thing. And so there's some level of, well, we're going to honor the way they do things because we don't want to completely shoot them in the foot. We want them to keep making money, but they need to be integrated into the whole. And so how do we solve that problem? And that never, at least in my experience, it often never gets solved all the way, right? It'll get solved part way, and then the larger organization will move on to the next acquisition. And now they're busy with that, and they'll like get 60% there. But then there's always that messy middle left over. And I think in this particular case, there is a lot of that messiness just still left over from several of those transactions.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing because exactly what you said, like when you buy and acquire, make an acquisition, especially for big companies, there is everybody needs to use our systems from the larger organization most times. But the solution to using those isn't always we're going to adopt that tool and modify that tool to work for your business, right? Because maybe they work a little differently. Maybe they have some different needs, and that's how they were being successful, and it was a differentiator in their market. And because they're not going to necessarily change that bigger one, these little augmentations start cropping up where, well, I'm going to build this thing that I didn't have before, but it's what I have to have so I can still do what I was doing and still integrate with the bigger system, right? And yeah, that type of thing happens all the time, and it's interesting that you said we've been through it, and and it's interesting to see how much effort is put into doing it, and yet it still isn't always successful. They spend a lot of money. Large organizations will spend a lot of money on, a merger and acquisitions strategy, and they'll do lots of things, and a lot of those things are really good, but they'll miss some key
and the ones
components
that you and I have been directly involved with. I'm thinking of one in particular. To this day, I don't think they ever solved the problem of fully integrating those teams with each other in terms of tooling, approach to the products that were being developed. Like it's still, they're all now legacy components of a larger business.
Yep.
And it's
in that one in particular, it's because it's so much different than what everything else was, right? They didn't just buy a smaller company that does exactly the same thing. Most people don't. They buy a company that is in a little bit different space, doing a little bit different thing, and creates this challenge. And it's we've helped a couple of organizations through some challenges related to this, and a lot of it has to do with, we talked about IT partnerships. We talked about it's all these little things, and it could take a long time for it to really start to get through. So
yeah, I'll say from my perspective for this client we're talking about, what stood out to them was they have so many good people.
Oh yeah,
are hard workers and smart that are all committed to helping the business. And it's really hard to recognize this situation happening. Like when we present this, when we lay out this scenario that we are seeing to a company, a lot of times what it feels like is they have thought about the individual symptoms and they say, oh, it's really nice to see it kind of packaged up together with a bow on it so that we can conceptualize it from, I think this is the core problem that they need to solve, that those downstream things will get resolved, that they know about, they feel familiar, but they haven't necessarily been thinking about it through this lens.
Yeah.
And so I'll say it's hard to recognize sometimes, even if you have super smart people who are capable.
And it's the reason that is really hard is because you need to actually step out of the silo, outside of the smaller area, and think bigger.
Mhm.
You need to say, what would this look like if I solved all of them or most of them, or treated these as one big thing rather than one particular problem, which is scary for a lot of people because, people go, well, that's going to cost me more money. It's going to take me more time. It's going to have more impact on the business. And those things are generally true.
In our case,
but the value is going to be more there.
Yeah, in our case, they invested money with us, right? We had to get paid for it. We also required tens of hours of like their people's time. Like it's maybe in the
Depending,
could cross over into the 100+
Yeah.
hours of time pretty easily, and much of it was spent looking at each other, being like, "Okay, you're talking about your silo. That doesn't really matter to my silo. Why am I here?" And I think that just goes to show another instance of we need somebody thinking at one level abstract higher,
Yeah.
because everyone is so laser focused on their thing.
So I'll give it. We were talking about examples. I'm gonna bring another example in, and this customer is going through a big IT change. They've decided to switch and consolidate onto a specific IT platform, and they made that decision at the top level. And everyone in the IT organization, et cetera, decided that's the smart idea. Like, let's go make this happen. But nobody really thought about the impact it would have on all the other groups. And because they're all, much like the other organization we're talking about, just getting work done, banging things
Smart,
out, making
kind,
stuff happen, right?
helpful.
Like they're focused on just, I'm going to get this, I'm empowered, I'm going to make this happen, right? And so then when the change finally applies, it's a problem because the new platform doesn't work for some people. And in some cases, it doesn't work because they don't know how to make it work. In some cases, it doesn't work because it doesn't have the same features. And it's a challenge. And that particular one, it's a very tactical one scenario, but it's very much like, we're going to solve this one problem for this purpose, and I'm not really going to think about all of the other impacts, because it's going to be good. It'll be fine, right? But it solves my IT compliance, like all of that problem. And in that case, it's a little bit more of a symptom, but it definitely sparked them to start having the right solution, right? Like they started to say, hey, wait a minute. The more we do this, the more we make changes like this, the more we try to grow in this way, and the more we behave this way where somebody's empowered to just make a decision that's going to impact everybody, like we're going to have problems. So we need to start managing that better, doing that better.
Yeah. And it's same client, they had a lean on the AI side towards, I'm smart enough to weave all these tools together and integrate them into my processes so that my processes are like whiz bang,
Clean. Yep.
awesome. But they weren't necessarily thinking about it from the lens of, how does the everyday
How do I
user
empower users? Yeah.
access AI and have it help with the 20% of busy work that doesn't exactly fall into a particular process. And so we had to urge them to, again, stop thinking about it from this siloed lens and instead think about it from all the lenses. And I'll say even in both of these scenarios, there's a degree of, we have such a strong desire to help them think about it this way, first and foremost. Secondarily is solve it for sure. But we have a pretty strong bias towards, you need this mindset first. And so it's common for us to have to like reinforce this quite a few times. They say, okay, I get it, but it doesn't necessarily help me solve it. Like
Today.
How do I actually do that? Is there any generalized, how do people solve this situation?
Yeah. It's some of it's a culture thing, empowering people to look at the silly thing that they have done and empower them to recognize that it's silly, and then ask for help. Like, hey, we should stop doing this, and have somebody on the other side that's going to listen. And then number two, for me, it's about a leadership and a strategy around everything that everyone is doing needs to work together for this common purpose. And it's okay to say, hey, that doesn't work for me. And it's also okay to say, I want to try something different, right? But it all has to roll up into something that's going to help and going to work. Because ultimately, people can take a direction from a leader that is, yes, go ahead and do this thing. You're empowered to make this do whatever you need to do, as something, as a statement that exists for eternity. And in most cases, what leaders really mean is you're empowered to solve this problem and then come back and figure out what the next evolution of the solution is. Because especially, and when I say that mostly for problems that are impacting the bigger organization, right? Problems that are impacting another department, problems that are involve another group, right? The moment you're empowered to solve those things, I need you to just get this thing solved for me. That's great. But then you need to loop back around and go, okay, we now know what a solution is for this. What's the best solution? And what's the benefits of the best solution versus what we're doing today, right? Like it's a mindset, a culture, and a leadership approach that gives space for that. And that doesn't mean, some people who may be listening to this might go, well, Bulb and Matt and Mike and Mitch are all saying we got to all come together and have a committee and decide. That's not what we mean either. It doesn't take very much for someone to make a decision about how one of these things might work, but it needs to be through the right lens, right? And the first lens is all about just getting it done. The second lens is about, okay, how should this fit in the broader scheme of things? And I do not want committees. I do not want people to spend months and months and months sorting this out. I want to empower them to help solve this the rest of the way. I want to tell them it's not good enough just to solve it this one time for 3 months. I want people to know that it's okay for them to come back and say, I need more to do it the right way.
Where do you feel like change management consultants fit into that?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Like, there's a whole segment of the consulting industry that is built for this purpose.
It's that yes and no. Change management is really about managing a change. So there's got to be a change, right?
We're talking about, at least in the context of these customers, this is the way that we have told them to approach it is it's constant change. Get ready.
Correct.
It's a lifestyle change, not a magic pill.
Correct.
Right. And
so change is interesting because change managers can fall into change management professionals can fall into a couple different categories. The end that is just taking a change and then communicating it, I don't think they have a lot of involvement, quite frankly, except for maybe in a feedback loop. We just applied this change. I'm getting feedback that something's bad's happening. Let's go bring it up. On the other end of it, which is like helping to define and make sure the change that's happening is the right change, they can be a huge part of it. If they're given a directive, if the problem they're trying to solve isn't the tactical one, but the problem that we're talking about,
right,
it can transform the way change happens within an organization. It can be part of that solution. We've talked about one way this can change is to say this group or this person is in charge of this organization's processes at a meta level, right? That's one way to solve it, is give ownership to the whole thing to either one or a small group of people. Another way to do it is to say, the change management team, if you actually have a formal change management team, they're in charge. They're in charge of taking the business problems and working those business problems to a solution with the technical people and with everything else. And so then you bring those problems into the change managers and the change team, and they're trying to help come up with the right solution that will work. And they may come up with a short-term solution, but then they would also be in charge of taking that to the next level and the next level, because they would start with a concept of, we can do it quickly, cheaply, on the dirty, and then, but that's not good enough long term, so we need to come back around. And they would track and prioritize that with other things. Yeah. It's a great call out. There's lots of organizations that don't have enough people to have that as a formal thing, but if you do, it's 100% a vital part of this process.
Yeah.
Two things before we wrap up that I want to cover. The first is, I have seen an attempt at resolving this with a customer recently, where they tried to do an innovation challenge where they empowered their team members to come up with solutions to problems that they see at their work, and they got to present it, and they got rewards according to who was the most innovative and things like that. I view that as amazing. Like, I love that concept. What is stopping that from being the solution?
I think it's about the implementation. Having an innovation challenge that's running year round, nonstop, and anyone can submit and say, "Hey, I think we should fix this," could be a part of solving it.
Let's say they did it just once a year.
Yeah. So, doing an innovation challenge once a year where you make a big, huge deal out of it, I don't think it solves this problem in the way that we're talking about. There's two types of innovation. One is innovation that is transforming a business. The story about the guy who developed Flamin' Hot Cheetos. That is a true innovation, right? And that is what that type of challenge I would try to focus that on. That's not for what we're talking about.
Sure.
Right? For me, what we're talking about should be an ongoing, nonstop, like, people should be looking for those things and trying to solve them.
I think generally it lacks alignment and adherence to a North Star. I think that's one of the challenges with something like that. Like, you could, if you knew that you were trying to get there, you could maybe incorporate that. But that's what you're kind of describing is more of like a codathon, solve this particular problem in an innovative
It's an
way.
event.
It's less, there's no why. Like, why am I doing that? Make things better? Cool. But that's not really a North Star.
Cool. Yeah. So I view it as, I view that as a good example of an effort in the right direction, that with the right structure,
It's
and
good intention.
repetition could be really helpful.
Yeah.
But it can't be a once a year event, basically. Last call out is to any leaders listening. They feel this problem a little bit. Where do they start? How do they approach this thing? Like, if you could boil it, give me a 2-minute sound bite here that we're gonna post everywhere. What do leaders need to do who feel like they're in this problem, want to get out of it, because it is not a pain pill, it's a lifestyle change?
I think the first step is admitting you have a problem. Like, you got to recognize it. If you don't recognize that, maybe you're
Recognize it's this problem, not
right, that is this problem, not that tool isn't doing what I want that tool to do, right? So I think that's the first part of it. If you don't know that that's going on, here's your sign. It's probably going on. And so then after that, assemble the right team. Like, identify some champions, some leaders, some people that are willing to put in extra effort, because that's what it's going to take. Because one of the things that I think we've kind of danced around a little bit is, like, people want to, like, good people want to solve problems. They work hard to solve the problems within their world, but they've got a day job. They've got, like, normal responsibilities. And so the people that you want involved in this type of effort are people that are willing to put in the extra time to do their day job plus, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second, because I think it's part of what you're talking about, which is this isn't an easy thing to solve. Lots of people at organizations aren't capable of doing what we're talking about. And the reason for that is because it takes space, like what Mike was just talking about. You need to have the time. You need to have the ability to step out of where you're at and put a different hat on. And then you need to be able to prioritize appropriately based on the goals that the business has, right? Because if you don't have all three of those from whoever's doing this, you're going to fail, right? If they don't have time, it'll never happen. They'll never do anything. If they can't pull out, the thing that they're going to fix is just going to make it worse because it's going to be one problem. They just keep fixing another problem and whack-a-mole, another thing. And if they don't have the ability to align it, you're not going to, you're going to be, you won't be seen as valuable to the organization. It'll be seen as valuable as a one-off. Oh, that helped sales. Oh, that helped whatever, right? If you can align it to the business goals, you can all of a sudden say, we increased sales and delivery by X percentage, or we improved employee retention, or we like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? What's the business problems you have? And then looking at that across the business, how are we going to solve that? And there's a lot of intertwined ways to do this. It's, you mentioned identifying a team, bringing people together. That's definitely part of it, or could be part of it. It also could be, this is what the executive team is going to be focused on, right? We just did a major acquisition 5 years ago. We still are having problems. This next 2 years, the executive team is going to take this on, right? And they're going to focus on it, right? It doesn't have to be, bring an outside person in or bring a bunch of people who are smart about all the problems. It can be a strategic thing. It can be an outside, an internal, like it could be lots of things. But much like you said, Mitch, and Mike said it too, about you have to realize that you have that this is the problem, and then you need to start tackling it as a thing, not just tackling one problem here, one problem here. If you continue to do that, if you continue to empower your finance team to solve a problem over here, while not also talking to the finance team about these other 4 problems that you got going on, you're going to fail.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's helpful. There you have it, folks. The quick and easy solution to this problem. Just follow Matt's steps there, and no problem. You will have it all fixed.
Are you implying that I talked really long again?
No. That you gave me my clip, my concise, and it's on paper. It's so easy. Right?
Good thing shorts are longer now.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, it was good chatting about this. Like all of our topics, I feel like it intertwines with so many different things, but it's a slightly different lens on a similar problem. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, if you feel this, we actually have a feedback form at bulb.digital/feedback. You're welcome to drop us a note, and we'll respond in there. We'll either help you, or we will console you, or what's it called, where we feel the problem.
We'll just
commiserate.
Yeah,
we could just listen. Some people just need you to listen.
Yeah, we'll be a listening ear for you. Cool. Well, anyway, thanks for chatting today, you guys, and we will see you all again soon.
It's been fun.
Thanks, everybody.